Welcome to Emma's English.
You will not believe what my hallway looks like right now, Tom.
Let me guess, you have finally decided to start that home renovation project you've been talking about for months.
I wish that were the case, but no, it is actually much worse and far less productive than a home renovation.
Okay, now you have piqued my curiosity. So what is currently taking over your hallway?
It is a massive obstacle course of giant cardboard boxes, packing tape, and plastic mailing bags.
Ah, the classic aftermath of a late-night online shopping spree, am I right?
You hit the nail right on the head, though I prefer to call it a highly optimistic wardrobe update.
Let me guess, you ordered a bunch of stuff and none of it actually fits or looks like the pictures online.
Exactly. I fell into the trap of ordering the same pair of trousers in 3 different sizes because I was paranoid about the fit.
That is a classic strategy, but it always backfires because you are guaranteed to have to return at least 2 of them.
Yes, and now I am left with a mountain of packaging and a sense of dread about the whole return process.
It is funny how easy they make it to buy things, but sending them back feels like a part-time job.
It really does, and I have just been staring at those boxes for 3 days, hoping they will somehow return themselves.
I hate to break it to you, Emma, but those boxes do not have legs and the post office is not going to come to you.
I know, but a girl can dream, can she not?
Absolutely, but in the meantime, you are stuck navigating a cardboard maze just to get to your bathroom.
It is a genuine safety hazard, especially when I'm half awake in the morning looking for coffee.
Well, at least it gives us a very relatable topic to dissect today because I think everyone struggles with this.
That is so true, and I am glad I am not the alone in my procrastination.
Trust me, you are definitely not alone, and I have some embarrassing stories of my own to share.
I cannot wait to hear them, but first, let us talk about how we even get ourselves into this mess in the first place.
It all starts with that dangerous one-click purchasing button on our phones.
Oh, that button is my absolute worst enemy, especially after a long and stressful day at work.
It's just too easy to scroll through a store, select a few things, and let the algorithm do the rest.
It really is. And before you know it, you have spent a small fortune on things you don't even need.
And then comes the waiting period where you get all excited for the packages to arrive.
Yes, the anticipation is almost better than the actual items themselves.
But then the delivery driver rings the doorbell, you open the boxes, and the disappointment sets in.
That moment of truth is always so brutal, especially when you try the clothes on and they look ridiculous.
I think we have all had that experience of looking in the mirror and wondering what the designers were thinking.
Or wondering what I was thinking when I convinced myself that neon green was my color.
Neon green is a bold choice, Emma, but I admire your confidence for trying to pull it off.
Well, my confidence quickly vanished, and now that neon green sweater is sitting in a box in my hallway.
Along with your hopes and dreams of a new fashion era, apparently.
Precisely. And now the real work begins because I have to face the administrative nightmare of returning them.
It is the ultimate test of adult responsibility, and I think many of us fail it on a regular basis.
I know I certainly do, and my closet is proof of my failed return attempts.
That makes me feel slightly better, but we really need to look at why this simple task feels so incredibly heavy.
It's all about the friction that companies put in place to keep our money.
You were so right. They make the buying process completely frictionless, but the return process is full of hurdles.
Exactly. And today we are going to dive deep into those hurdles and talk about how we handle them.
Or how we avoid handling them, which is my specialty.
Either way, it's going to be a very entertaining conversation. So let us get into the details of this daily struggle. I think the absolute worst part of the whole process is that initial feeling when you realize you have made a mistake.
Oh, definitely. Because you go from this high of receiving a package to this sudden low of realization.
Yes, I often experience intense buyer's remorse the moment I try on the clothes and realize they are completely wrong for me.
Buyer's remorse is such a powerful phrase, and it really describes that specific guilt and regret.
It really does. And for those who might not know, buyer's remorse is that feeling of regret or anxiety you get after making a purchase, especially an expensive or unnecessary one.
Yes, it is that voice in your head asking why you spent money on something you do not even like.
Exactly. And that buyer's remorse is what should motivate me to return the items immediately, but instead it just paralyzes me.
I think the guilt makes us want to hide the items away so we do not have to look at our bad decisions.
That is so accurate. I often just shove the clothes back into the box and put the box in the corner.
And that is where the procrastination cycle truly begins, because out of sight, out of mind.
Yes, and I am currently dragging my feet when it comes to actually starting the return process.
Dragging your feet is another perfect way to describe the situation, Emma.
It really is, and to drag one's feet means to delay taking action or progress slowly because you do not want to do something.
Exactly, you are moving as slowly as possible because the task ahead of you feels so unappealing.
That is me right now. I am dragging my feet because the thought of printing labels and taping boxes is exhausting.
Why is printing a label such a massive barrier for our generation, though?
Because nobody owns a working printer anymore, Tom. It is a universal law of modern life.
That is so true. I do not think I have owned a functioning printer in at least 5 years.
So to print a label, you have to go to the office or ask a friend or find a library, which is a whole project in itself.
It turns a simple return into an entire weekend quest.
Exactly. And because of that, we tend to sit on these packages for weeks on end.
To sit on something is a great expression here, and it basically means to hold on to something or delay taking action on it.
Yes, instead of dealing with the return immediately, we sit on it, meaning we just let the package occupy space in our homes and minds.
I am the kin of sitting on packages, Emma, and I have a really embarrassing confession to make.
Oh, please share. I love hearing about your shopping disasters.
Well, last year I bought a pair of high-end running shoes online, but they were a bit too tight.
Okay, that sounds like a very common problem, so did you return them?
I fully intended to, but I sat on that package for so long that the 30-day return window completely expired.
No, Tom, that is the ultimate retail tragedy. So what did you do with the shoes?
They are still sitting in my closet, brand new, in their box, serving as a constant monument to my procrastination.
That is hilarious, but also so painful because those shoes were probably expensive.
They were, and every time I open my closet, I feel a fresh wave of buyer's remorse all over again.
It is a vicious cycle, and all because we did not want to print a simple piece of paper and walk to the post office.
But the post office is another major obstacle, let's be honest.
Oh, don't even get me started on the post office. It is a place where time stands still.
The lines are always incredibly long, and they always seem to move at a snail's pace.
And there's always that awkward moment when you get to the front of the line and realize you forgot to tape the box securely.
Yes, and then you have to buy their overpriced tape and try to assemble your box while everyone behind you glares at you.
The social pressure in a post office line is intense. I feel like everyone is judging my packaging skills.
They probably are, because we all just want to get our errands done and get out of there.
It's just a very stressful environment for something that should be a simple transaction.
And let's not forget the confusion of different shipping carriers and drop-off locations.
Yes, some stores use one carrier, some use another, and you have to find the specific drop-off point for each one.
It's like a treasure hunt, but instead of finding gold, you just get rid of a neon green sweater.
That is a very accurate description, and it's why I have 3 different boxes from 3 different stores in my hallway.
So you have to go to 3 different places to return them all?
Yes, one goes to the local convenience store, one goes to the post office, and one requires a specific locker drop-off.
That is a logistical nightmare, Emma. No wonder you are dragging your feet.
Thank you for validating my struggle, Tom. I knew you would understand.
I do, but we still have to find a way to overcome this because your hallway cannot remain a warehouse forever.
I know, and my flatmate is starting to look at me with real concern in her eyes.
She's probably wondering if she needs to stage an intervention for your shopping habits.
She actually suggested that we charge the boxes rent because they've been living with us for so long.
That is a brilliant idea. Maybe that would motivate you to finally move them.
It might, but the psychological barrier is just so strong.
Why do you think we find it so hard to just do it and get it over with?
I think it's because returns represent a failure. We have to admit that we made a mistake and wasted our time.
That is deep, Emma, but I think you are right. It's a physical reminder of a bad decision.
Exactly. When you keep the item, you can still pretend that you might wear it one day, or that it might suddenly fit.
Yes, the classic delusion of I'll lose weight or I'll find the perfect occasion for this extremely specific outfit.
We are all guilty of that delusion, but deep down, we know the truth.
We do, and the truth is that the box needs to go back to where it came from.
But the effort required to make that happen feels disproportionate to the reward.
True, because you're not getting new money, you're just getting back money you already spent.
Exactly. It doesn't feel like a win, it just feels like returning to zero.
But returning to zero is much better than staying in the negative with a closet full of clothes you cannot wear.
That is a very logical point, Tom, and I hate how right you are.
I'm only saying this because I care about your hallway and your safety.
I appreciate that, but I still need some mental preparation for the journey.
How much mental preparation does it take to tape a box, Emma?
You would be surprised, Tom. It is a very complex emotional process.
Well, while you process your emotions, let's talk about how this whole return culture affects the world around us.
That is a great transition because there's actually a huge environmental side to this that we often ignore.
Yes, and it's something that made me think twice about my online shopping habits.
Let's definitely talk about that, but first let's take a short breath before we dive into the heavy stuff.
Sounds like a plan. Let's keep the conversation moving.
So Tom, you mentioned the environmental impact of returns, and it is actually quite shocking when you look into it.
It really is. I read an article recently that said a huge percentage of returned clothes do not even go back on the shelves.
Yes, I heard about that. Many companies find it cheaper to just throw them away or burn them than to inspect and repackage them.
That is absolutely mind-blowing and honestly quite devastating to think about.
It makes you realize that our convenience has a very high cost for the planet.
Exactly. All that shipping back and forth creates a massive amount of carbon emissions.
And then there is the waste from all the packaging material, the boxes, the plastic wrap, the labels.
It really makes me want to be more mindful about what I buy in the first place.
Me too. But it is hard to break the habit when the shopping apps are designed to be so addictive.
They really are. They use all these psychological tricks to make us press that buy button.
But knowing that my returns might end up in a landfill is a really good reality check.
It definitely adds another layer of guilt to the whole process.
Yes, as if buyer's remorse was not enough, now we have environmental guilt too.
But on a practical level, we still have to deal with the packages we already have.
Unfortunately, yes, and the whole return process is just such a hassle from start to finish.
A hassle is the absolute perfect word to describe this entire situation.
It really is. And for our listeners, a hassle is something that is extremely annoying, inconvenient, or troublesome to do.
Yes, it is a task that requires a lot of effort and gives you nothing but frustration in return.
That is exactly how I feel about dealing with these packages. It is just a major hassle.
But at some point, you just have to bite the bullet and get it done.
Biting the bullet is definitely what I need to do this weekend, Tom.
That is a very common idiom, and to bite the bullet means to force yourself to do something difficult, unpleasant, or painful that you have been avoiding.
Yes, it comes from the old days when soldiers had to bite on a lead bullet to cope with pain during surgery without anesthesia.
Wow, that is a pretty intense history for a phrase we use about returning trousers.
It is, but honestly, going to the post office on a Saturday morning feels almost that dramatic to me.
I think you might be exaggerating just a little bit, Emma.
Only a little bit, Tom. But the sentiment is the same. I just need to face the unpleasant task and get it over with.
Well, I really hope you finally get around to it because those boxes are not getting any smaller.
To get around to something is another phrase I use all the time when I am procrastinating.
It is very useful, and to get around to something means to finally find the time or the motivation to do a task that you have been postponing.
Exactly. I keep saying I will do it tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes.
That is the classic procrastinator's motto, is it not?
It certainly is, but I promise you, Tom, I will get around to it this weekend.
I'm going to hold you to that, Emma, and I expect a full report on Monday.
Oh dear, now I actually have to do it because I cannot face your disappointment.
Peer pressure can be a wonderful tool for productivity.
It really can. Maybe we should all have a return buddy to keep us accountable.
That is actually a great business idea, a service where someone comes to your house and forces you to return your packages.
I would pay good money for that service, Tom. You should definitely start that business.
I will add it to my list of ideas that I will probably never get around to starting.
Touché, Tom. It seems we are both guilty of dragging our feet in different ways.
We are indeed, but at least we can laugh about our shared struggles.
Yes, and it is comforting to know that this is a universal modern experience.
It really is. No matter where you are in the world, dealing with online returns is a universal pain.
It makes me miss the old days of shopping in actual, physical stores.
Me too. There was something nice about trying things on in a fitting room and making a decision right then and there.
Yes, and if you didn't like it, you just left it on the rack and walked away, no strings attached.
And no cardboard boxes taking over your hallway for weeks.
Exactly. The transaction was complete the moment you left the store.
But now shopping is a continuous process that never really seems to end.
It's a cycle of buying, waiting, regretting, returning, and then starting all over again.
We need to break this cycle, Emma, for our own sanity and for the planet.
I agree, and my first step is going to be clearing out my hallway this weekend.
I believe in you, Emma. You can do this.
Thank you, Tom. Your support means a lot, even if you are mostly just laughing at my misery.
Hey, what are friends for if not to gently mock your self-inflicted problems?
Very true, and it does make the whole situation feel a lot lighter.
That is the goal, and I think we have covered a lot of ground today on this topic.
We really have, and it's been a great opportunity to explore some really useful language as well.
Absolutely, because discussing daily struggles is the perfect way to learn natural English.
I agree, and speaking of the language we used today, we should probably take a closer look at some of those phrases.
That is a great idea. Let's do that.
It is always fascinating to see how many natural idioms we use without even thinking about it when we are just chatting.
It really is, and I think for our listeners, understanding these phrases is the key to moving from intermediate to advanced English.
Absolutely, because these are the kinds of expressions that native speakers use daily, but you rarely find them in traditional textbooks.
For example, we talked about how I often sit on packages for a long time.
Yes, to sit on something is such a colorful way to describe procrastination.
It is, and it is important to note that we do not mean literally sitting on a cardboard box, though that would be a very strange way to live.
Right, it means to delay taking action on something, like a decision, a project, or in this case, a return package.
Exactly. You could also say you are sitting on a business proposal or sitting on an important email.
That is a great point. It is very versatile and can be used in both professional and casual contexts.
And then we have the phrase to drag one's feet, which is very similar but has a slightly different nuance.
Yes, dragging your feet implies that you are moving very slowly or delaying something because you really do not want to do it.
Right. It shows a lack of enthusiasm or motivation for the task.
Exactly, like a child dragging their feet when they are told to go to bed.
Or me dragging my feet when it is time to do my taxes.
We all drag our feet on that one, Tom. That is another universal struggle.
And then we have the phrase to get around to something, which is the ultimate goal of any procrastinator.
Yes, to get around to something means to finally find the time and energy to do a task that you have been planning to do for a while.
It is a phrasal verb, and it is very common in everyday conversation.
It is, and we often use it in the negative, like saying, I never got around to cleaning the garage.
Yes, or I hope to get around to reading that book this weekend.
It is a very natural way to talk about your schedule and your intentions.
And of course, we cannot forget about buyer's remorse, which is a highly specific but very common feeling.
Yes, buyer's remorse is that sudden wave of regret or guilt after you spend money, especially on something impulsive.
We have all felt that, especially with online shopping, where the purchase feels less real until the package actually arrives.
Exactly. It is a very useful term to describe that specific psychological state.
And then we talked about how returning packages is such a hassle.
Yes, a hassle is a noun that means an annoying, inconvenient, or troublesome situation.
You can also use it as a verb, like asking someone to stop hassling you, which means to bother or annoy someone.
That is true, but in this context, we usually say it's a hassle or it's too much of a hassle.
Right. It is a great way to express your frustration with a complicated task.
And finally, we have to bite the bullet, which is one of my favorite idioms.
It has such a strong image associated with it of facing a difficult situation with courage.
Yes, to bite the bullet means to force yourself to do something unpleasant or inevitable that you have been avoiding.
Like biting the bullet and going to the dentist, or in your case, biting the bullet and going to the post office.
Exactly. It's about accepting the temporary discomfort to get the job done.
These are all such fantastic phrases, and they really help to make your English sound more natural and expressive.
They do, and I hope our listeners find them useful for their own conversations.
I am sure they will, and practicing them is the best way to make them a natural part of your vocabulary.
Definitely. And speaking of practicing and remembering these phrases, I have a quick tip for our listeners.
Oh, let us hear it, Emma.
Well, speaking of remembering new words, did you know we have a PDF script available for every single episode of our show?
Yes, and it is a fantastic resource because it contains the full text of our conversation today.
It really is, and you can download it for free to read along with us, practice your shadowing, or just review the vocabulary at your own pace.
Shadowing is such a powerful technique for improving your pronunciation and fluency, and having the script makes it so much easier.
Exactly, and we have also pinned the link to the PDF in the comments section below, so it is super easy to find.
And while you are down there downloading the script, do not forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button.
Yes, please do. It really helps us to keep creating these lessons for you every week.
We love reading your comments and seeing your progress, so join the Emma's English Talk community today.
We would love to have you. And now that we have shared that exciting news, let us do a quick recap before we say goodbye.
Sounds good. Let us do a final sweep of the key vocabulary we used today.
All right, and speaking of reviewing, before we say goodbye today, let us do a quick review of the 6 target expressions we discussed.
I will start with the first one, which was buyer's remorse.
Great. And as we discussed, buyer's remorse is that feeling of regret or anxiety you get after buying something.
An example would be, I experienced intense buyer's remorse after purchasing that expensive watch that I rarely wear.
Perfect. And the second phrase was to drag one's feet.
This means to delay taking action or make slow progress because you do not want to do something.
For example, the company is dragging its feet on releasing the new software update.
Exactly. And the third expression was to sit on something.
This means to hold on to something or delay taking action on it for a long period of time.
An example sentence is, do not sit on that job offer for too long, or they might choose someone else.
That is a very practical example. And the fourth word was a hassle.
A hassle is an annoying, inconvenient, or troublesome situation or task.
For example, finding a parking spot downtown during rush hour is always a major hassle.
It certainly is. And the fifth phrase was to bite the bullet.
This means to force yourself to do something difficult, unpleasant, or inevitable.
An example would be, I finally decided to bite the bullet and have a difficult conversation with my boss.
That is a tough one, but sometimes necessary, and our final phrase was to get around to.
This means to finally find the time or opportunity to do something that you have been planning to do.
For example, I need to get around to cleaning my apartment before my guests arrive this evening.
Excellent. That is all 6 of our target expressions, and they are all so useful for everyday communication.
They really are, and I hope our listeners feel more confident using them now.
I am sure they do. And now it is time for us to hear from our amazing audience.
Yes, we want to know, how do you handle online shopping returns? And are you dragging your feet on any packages right now?
Or maybe you have a funny story about buyer's remorse that you want to share with us.
Please let us know in the comments below. We really want to read your answers and chat with you there.
Yes, we love connecting with you all, so do not be shy.
Thank you so much for studying with us today. You did an amazing job.
Keep practicing, keep listening, and we will see you in the next episode of Emma's English Talk.
Goodbye, everyone, and happy learning.
Bye-bye.